Someone disrespected you recently. Maybe they said something in front of other people. Maybe they dismissed you in a meeting. Maybe they spoke to you in a tone that made something tighten in your chest, and you felt it. That heat, that quick, sharp rise of something that wanted to come out, wanted to say something back, wanted to make them understand in no uncertain terms exactly what they just did and exactly who they just did it to. And maybe you held it in. Maybe you said something you immediately regretted. Maybe you replayed it for the rest of the day, getting angrier in your head with every replay, crafting the perfect response, the one that would have made them shrink, the one that would have made everyone in that room see exactly what kind of person they are. And the worst part, the part nobody talks about, is that even if you had said that perfect thing, even if you had delivered the most devastating comeback in the history of human conflict, you still would have lost. Not the argument, something more important than the argument, your peace, your clarity, the version of yourself that does not need to prove anything to anyone. Here is what the Stoics knew, and here is what changed everything for me the first time I truly understood it. Anger is not power. Anger is proof that something outside of you has taken control of something inside of you. And the Stoics, the men who faced betrayal at the highest levels of power, exile, loss, and public humiliation, never gave anyone that control, not because they did not feel it, but because they had something better to do with it. And today I am going to show you exactly what that was. Before we get into what the Stoics did, understand something about who these men actually were. Marcus Aurelius was constantly surrounded by senators who undermined him, generals who questioned him, and advisors who smiled to his face and worked against him behind his back. Seneca was exiled by an emperor who feared him, stripped of everything, sent away from everyone he loved. Epictetus was born a slave. He had no rights, no freedom, no control over a single external circumstance of his life. And yet of the three of them, Epictetus was perhaps the most at peace. Not because his life was easy, because he had figured out something that took the other 2 decades to understand. The only thing anyone can ever truly take from you is what you hand them. And he refused, every single time, to hand anyone his inner world. That is what we are building today. The first thing the Stoics did when disrespected, they paused before they did anything else. Not a dramatic pause, not the pause of someone who is visibly holding themselves back and clearly about to explode. A genuine pause. A small, deliberate space between what just happened and what they chose to do next. Marcus Aurelius called this the ruling faculty, the part of the mind that observes what is happening before the rest of the mind reacts to it, and he trained it every single day through journaling, through reflection, through the deliberate practice of noticing the gap between stimulus and response and choosing what lived in that gap. Because here is what happens in the moment of disrespect if you do not pause. Your brain, specifically the amygdala, fires before your rational mind has a chance to engage. You are operating on pure impulse. And impulse in the moment of disrespect almost never does what you actually want it to do. It says too much. It reveals too much. It hands the other person a reaction they were counting on, and it costs you something you cannot get back in the moment: your composure. The pause costs nothing and gives you everything. 2 seconds. That is all Marcus Aurelius was asking for. 2 seconds between what they did and what you chose to do with it. In those 2 seconds, your ruling faculty wakes up, your impulse steps back, and you become, in that tiny window, the most powerful person in the room. The second thing the Stoics did, they asked themselves one question. Not a complicated question, not a philosophical exercise that takes 20 minutes to complete. One question, and it is this: does this person's opinion of me change who I actually am? That is it. Does what they just said, does what they just did, does the way they just treated me change anything real about my character, about my work, about the actual substance of who I am? And the answer is almost always no. Epictetus wrote, "If someone speaks badly of you, do not defend yourself against what was said. Simply reply, you obviously do not know my other faults, or you would have mentioned those as well." He was not being sarcastic. He was being completely serious. He understood that the opinion of someone who disrespects you is not information about you. It is information about them, about their frustration, their insecurity, their need to diminish someone else to feel adequate themselves. And once you see it as information about them instead of a verdict about you, the whole thing changes. Because you cannot be threatened by data. You can only be threatened by something that has power over how you see yourself. And the Stoics refused to give anyone that power. The third thing the Stoics did. They responded with something nobody expected. Calm, not performed calm, not the tight jaw, forced smile, barely holding it together kind of calm. Genuine, settled. The kind of calm that comes from someone who is so certain of who they are that what you just said simply did not reach the place you were aiming for. And here is why that is so devastatingly effective. When someone disrespects you, they are expecting one of two things. Either you will react with emotion, anger, embarrassment, defensiveness, which confirms that they got to you, or you will shrink, go quiet, look away, say nothing, which confirms that they won. But calm gives them neither. It creates a gap between what they expected and what they received. And that gap is where their power over you dissolves completely. Marcus Aurelius wrote, the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. If someone disrespects you with noise and you meet it with stillness, you have not just won the moment. You have communicated something that no argument ever could, that you are operating from a completely different place, that their level is not your level, that whatever they threw landed somewhere below you, not because you are better than them, but because you are rooted in something they clearly are not, themselves. The fourth thing the Stoics did. They used it. This is the one most people miss. Because when we think about handling disrespect, we think about survival, how to get through the moment without losing too much. But the Stoics did not just survive disrespect, they harvested it. Seneca wrote, the wise man is not disturbed by insults. He uses them, not as fuel for anger, as fuel for self-examination, because here is the uncomfortable truth about disrespect. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes there is something in it worth looking at, not the delivery, not the cruelty, but underneath all of that a grain of something real, something that if you strip away the emotion and look at it clearly, might actually tell you something useful, about a blind spot you have, about something you could improve, about how you are showing up in a particular situation. The Stoics were ruthlessly honest with themselves, more honest than most people are comfortable being. And part of that honesty was the ability to receive criticism, even ugly criticism, even unfair criticism, and ask, is there 1% of truth in here that I should not throw away just because the packaging was offensive? This is not weakness. This is one of the most advanced forms of self-mastery available to a human being. The ability to separate the message from the messenger, to take what is useful, and leave the rest exactly where it came from. The fifth thing the Stoics did. They protected their inner world like it was the only thing worth protecting, because to them it was. Marcus Aurelius wrote, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That sentence is the entire philosophy in 21 words. Not power over what people say, not power over what people do, not power over whether someone treats you with the respect you deserve, power over your mind, over what you allow to live inside it, over what you give space to and what you refuse entry to. Because here is what anger at disrespect actually does to the person who carries it. It takes up space, real space, space that could be occupied by clarity, by focus, by the work that actually matters, by the people who actually deserve your attention. And instead, it fills with the image of someone who probably forgot what they said 20 minutes after they said it, while you are still replaying it at midnight, still composing the perfect response, still handing them real estate inside your mind for free long after the moment has passed. The Stoics protected against this not by being cold, but by being full, so completely full of their own purpose, their own work, their own genuine engagement with the life they were building, that there simply was not space for someone else's disrespect to set up residence. Your inner world is sacred, and nothing and no one deserves entry into it without your permission. The sixth thing the Stoics did, they remembered that this moment was temporary. Everything is. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this constantly, not with sadness, with relief. The pain of this moment, the heat of this humiliation, the weight of this disrespect will pass, not because time heals everything in the way people say it does, but because everything in life moves. Nothing stays exactly as it is, including the way this feels right now. Seneca wrote, Omnia aliena sunt tempus tantum nostrum est. Everything is alien to us. Time alone belongs to us. And the time you spend in anger at someone who disrespected you is time you gave away, not to them necessarily, but away from the life that is happening while you are busy replaying something that is already over. This moment will pass. The question is not whether it will. The question is what you will have done with yourself while you were waiting for it to. So here is what the Stoics were actually doing when they were disrespected. They were not suppressing anger. They were not pretending it did not happen. They were not being doormats. They were practicing something that took Marcus Aurelius decades to build, Seneca his entire career, Epictetus his whole life. The ability to be completely present in a difficult moment without being consumed by it, to feel the heat and choose, deliberately and consciously, not to hand it to the person who created it, to take what is useful from the experience and leave everything else exactly where it belongs, behind them, because they had places to go, work to do, a life to build, and none of those things required the approval, the respect, or the good behavior of every person they encountered along the way. Neither does yours. If this landed somewhere real for you today, share it with one person who is currently letting someone else's disrespect live, rent-free in their head. Subscribe for new Stoic wisdom here every single week.